Good afternoon, traders. Welcome to the Wave Theory class. I am glad to see quite a lot of you inside. Not everybody, but at least most of you are in here. I hope the rest of them will watch the recording and they'll get it. So today we're going to repeat MACD, but we're going to add to it. We're going to add to what you've learned in the MACD because it's so amazing. You've learned to actually break up the waves into many parts. Like you can break this up into 1, 2, 3, and you can break this part up into 1, 2, 3, right? So what I'm going to do today is show you how to combine them and how to label them. Remember, every single part of that will not be a separate structure of its own. There will be a number of waves that create a structure. So let's start with that. What is a structure today? Right? So for us to get there, here's what we're going to do today. Which charts you guys want me to use, by the way? Just type and I'll take the one that has the first 3 on it. Okay, Pong has 3 in it. I think everybody still wants me to use the Pong. Euro comes second, so I'll go with the Pong. The Pong is a little more complicated one than the Euro in any case. So we'll take everything out, as usual. We'll go to the monthly. And let's start from here. So what is a structure? What really do we mean when we said this is one part of its own, that's the second part of its own, this is a structure? What do we mean? It means that the entire chart, the entire chart, the yearly chart, is making a pattern, a single pattern. So if you go to the yearly chart, you are going to see one single pattern. Let's do that. Let's go to the Pong chart. So it's going to be Pong US. And if you look at this entire chart, this is not the Pong. This is a Sterling US. Nope, I don't think so. I think I may be getting something else. That doesn't look like Great British Pound. Let's see, to make sure we get that. Oh, that's not the Great British Pound. That's just a G. And we would look for Pound Sterling. Right, this is the correct one. This thing is making a single pattern, which means you're going to get an impulse. You're going to get a corrective structure, and you might get one more impulse if they break the low. And all in all, that will be a single pattern, a 3-wave structure. Just maybe this goes back up here. This all in all will be one single piece. Maybe it's something like this eventually. We'd look at it. This would make a single pattern, and then they will go back there, and all of this together will still make a single pattern, as you know it. If you look at this chart, we know this pattern will eventually be a 3-wave pattern. 100 years from now, it's going to be a 3-wave structure, not a 5-wave structure. There is one here. That's the impulse. And there is nowhere you're going to have a 3rd wave that will be longer than this because it has nowhere to go. Unless we think that Great Britain is going to get like Zimbabwe, right? Then we'll find place for it to go. I think you guys in Great Britain don't expect that. Well, you wouldn't be around in that time, right? Because we do think this might go back up first. And we could be in this consolidation for maybe the next 100 years. But we will still be in a single structure consolidating, if you understand what that means. One single structure. We break that up into fractals, into smaller structures, which means we can isolate this part as one of its own. We can isolate this whole piece here as one of its own. And within this, we will have a number of different structures, depends on how it forms, how it, what type of pattern as a corrective structure will be in there. We'll isolate it, but then we will put parts together to make a complete pattern. So we're looking for a complete pattern. We can put this 3 part together like this, 1, 2, 3, and this will give us a complete pattern. Right? We'll make an assumption that that is a complete pattern. And maybe that is all the correction. This thing is actually going down. We don't know that. We don't know that this doesn't do something like this and then make one more drop. And then we will put all of this to give us a single pattern. Maybe this actually does something like this. We don't know, right? We know this is the strongest one, so we will call that the A and the B. I'll come to that just now. This could actually do this, come back here, do this, come back here, and then eventually go back up. And that means we will have place to go down. They just have to break this low by a couple pips, break this low by a couple pips. Just correct deep, and then go down. Is that possible? We know patterns like that, so that is possible. We don't know how it will develop in the future, especially like on that bigger structure. We don't need to know that. We just need to know that as the pieces are developing, we're going to make the forecast for the next piece. But we will put all of that together to make one, because we know we can put this, this, and this together to make one so far. An incomplete one. We know it's incomplete, but it is one piece that is making. All of this, when it's completed, will be one single structure, one single pattern, and it might be a single impulse. See? So if you understand what we are actually doing here is we're isolating pieces to give us what is a single piece, and then we combine them to give us what is a pattern. So it's simple. First you find one piece, then you find another piece, then you find another piece, then you find another piece, and then you said, okay, good. This three-piece gives me one pattern on a lower degree, and when this goes up here, these give me one pattern on a higher degree. And all of this might just be one single piece on a higher degree. So all of this might be one single piece. Let me put a different color, one single piece. We come back, we do something like this, and then we go back up again. So what our job here now, right? Our job here now is to combine these pieces to make a single pattern. How do you combine? Which parts you're going to put with which part to make a single pattern? And that is how you're going to do your forecast. You will do your forecast based on combining pieces, little bits and pieces in there to make patterns. And patterns, you have to know what patterns you're going to make. For you to make the patterns in the first place, yes, for you to make the pattern in the first place, you have to know them all. So remember what I told every single one of you before you join the group? You have to memorize all the patterns. There is no exception to that, and we will not be teaching them in here. The names are simple. They're in the book. All of you should have read the book like about 6 times already. You write down the names, you write down the structure that they have inside, and then when you come in here, we show you how to identify it in the chart. We show you how to label it, and we show you how to recognize it, basically, right? So it will be easy for you to recognize. This is one piece, this is one piece, and this is one piece. Those three pieces together gives us a single pattern, right? We know that because we decided that whole thing is one piece. Remember, we said this whole thing is one single piece of the bigger structure. See that? And that is where the MACD is good, in isolating them and then combining them. So when you want to know how many pieces, how many different patterns you have within that single one, you break this up. That's what we did the last time. You break it up into smaller pieces. That is, you go in the lower time frame, like the weekly. And you said, well, now I can see we have many pieces in there. We have much more waves in there. And then you combine them again. If you want to know exactly how many you have in there, there's a lot of them. You can do 2 things. You can combine the MACD, or you can combine them into patterns. And that's easy to do if you know patterns. Because every single pattern, regardless of what structure it is, and I think this is easy, but you should all remember it, because I know that some traders were arguing over it and they had no idea that they were wrong. Every single structure starts with an impulse. Regardless whether it's going to be a motive structure or it's going to be a corrective structure. And I hope all of you understand the difference between motive, impulsive, and corrective, right? So whether it's an impulsive, a motive, or a corrective structure, it doesn't matter what structure it's going to be, it will always start with an impulse, followed by a correction, and then another impulse. These 3 together is enough to make a pattern, right? That is a complete pattern. It doesn't have to be, they can make 5, they can make 7, they can make 9, they can make more. But 3 is enough to give you a pattern. 1 by itself will never be a pattern. So what if we see a very big move like this in a correction, like on the Aussie monthly? we can be sure that if you go and you break that up, somewhere in the middle here, there is a small correction. And inside of these, there are much more smaller corrections. We know that for sure. But sometimes you see it as one sharp piece because you're looking at a higher time frame. You will have to go much lower to see it. So not every time you will see that three-wave breakup, but that is very rare. Most time you will see it. Most time you will see three waves that are perfect corrective structure like this, right? This is not a perfect one, but at least the three-wave part is a perfect one, right? 1, 2, 3. And then 1, 2, 3. That is why we think, and we are pretty much confident that that will go down within the structure. That should go down some more. See? We have the confidence that that could go down some more. So how do you combine them? Let's go into the combination part. We're always going to start, every time we're going to start with the mere fact that all corrective structures are basic three-wave structures. An impulse, a correction, and an impulse. When you're forecasting, you will always start with this as your very, very basic pattern. We know that this might just be simple and that it might become a triple tree, a double tree, a triangle, a running flat, a contracting flat, whatever it could be. We don't know what the correction will eventually be, but we will always forecast a correction like this for simplicity. As it's developing, it will tell us what it is, but we will always do this. And for labeling purpose, labeling corrective structures, right? This is how we would label them. I'll go more into label. I'll just give you a basic. We would look at the top of this and we'd look at the top of this. Since all structures will have at least three waves, whether they're impulsive or corrective, they will have at least three waves in them. For labeling purpose, we're going to say we would look for divergence. So let's make an assumption that between these two here, we have divergence. Between this one and this one. Oh, I should put this a little more here. We have divergence. If there's divergence between the two impulses, we would label this A, B, C. Because an ABC is a complete pattern. Let me just draw that back. I'll choose two impulses that has divergence. So I'll choose this one here and a correction that goes like this and this one here. So between these two, there is divergence. This would be an A, a B, and a C. What that tells us? That tells us that that corrective structure has ended. Because ABC is one complete pattern. There isn't anything like ABC, DE, where the tops are broken, right? ABC, DE are used only to label triangular pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or if you're going up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then continue. Only triangular patterns are labeled A, B, C, D, E. No exception there. You're not looking for divergence. You're not looking for anything. It's a triangle, expanding, contracting, barrier triangle. It doesn't matter. It's A, B, C, D, E. Full stop. No other pattern is labeled A, B, C, D, E. Right? Simple. Why? Because it's a corrective structure, but it has more than A, B, C. It has D and E inside as a corrective structure. So what happens if we have 1, we have 2, and we have 3, but no divergence? Let's say this MACD is higher, no divergence. It doesn't matter whether there's divergence in a triangle or no divergence in a triangle. Triangles are always going to be labeled A, B, C, D, E. Forget about anything else. We will talk about divergence when we come to do triangular patterns, whether there will be divergence or not, but it's simple. All triangles are labeled A, B, C, D, E. Full stop. The other confusing one is whether you're going to label ABC. ABC is when you have divergence. When you don't have divergence, we will label W, X, Y. So why not label it ABC? What's the difference between labeling ABC and WXY if you have divergence or you don't have divergence? What difference does this make? It makes one major difference. When you don't have divergence, you're always anticipating correction and one more impulse up. You're going to anticipate a Z wave if you're in a corrective structure. I mean a very big corrective structure. You will anticipate the Z wave up. Right? Now, can we label this? Why not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And people ask me that. Well, why do you label WX, Y, X, Z and not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Well, then we can do that. You can label /1, /2, /3. Forget about the 4 and 5. We don't have that as yet. We can do that if they fit the criteria for Elliott wave rules. Since we are not trying to change what Elliott did, we're not trying to change that theory, we're just trying to enhance it. We will go with that and said, okay, let it fit the rules that he laid out. And all of you know those rules, right? First, this one has to be pretty, the fourth wave should never come back into this territory. If it does, that negates it in terms of impulsive move, right? Second, each one of these should have 5 subwaves in them, or one single strong move. They should, in other words, it should never have 3 waves inside of it if it's not making an ending diagonal or a leading diagonal. Right? If it's not an ending or leading diagonal, then those waves have to be 5 wave subwaves. So that is how we will differentiate between a wave 1, 2, 3 and a wave W, X, Y. The very first wave, we're going to look into this very first wave here. If the very first wave has 1, 2, 3, I think question closed. You get this? You don't even have to look into that, because this already tells us that that could never be a motive wave. Motive waves should have 5 waves in them. What a lot of Elliott wavers do is they tend to fix that to make 5 waves. So this is what they will do. They'll write 1, 2, and they will come somewhere in here and they'll look for a small correction like this, and they will write 3, 4, 5. You would see that pretty often. Not only is it wrong and misleading, I think it's malicious. They're actually willfully doing something they know is wrong, just because they have to prove something. And one guy was trying to do that on TradingView with a big argument. I don't know how many of you saw the chart with this piece here. When I said I labeled this one W, he was like, what are you doing? That's a 1. That's a wave 1. You have no clue. You're not an Elliott waver. I was like, well, yes, show me 5 waves in it. Because I can see 1, 2, 3. And I said, if you see more than 3, stop using that substance you're using. You need to get off of it. He says, you have no idea. There are subwaves and there are more waves in here. So he labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's exactly how he labeled it. He labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I just told him, okay, conversation is over. Because I'm arguing with someone who has no idea. Absolutely no idea what he's doing. Right? Absolutely. If you do that, you got to stop using that thing you're using. Because if you can't see 3 waves in there, something is wrong with you. There's only 3 waves in there. You can fix it. Most Elliott wavers try to fix it so that they can prove that the theory is working. The theory is working. You don't have to prove it. You have to use it correctly. Make sure you know this. You don't have to prove whether there is waves in the chart, whether the wave theory is working. It is working. You can see it. We don't have to prove to the rest of the world, hey, this theory is correct. You should have 535. No, ignore that part. There are waves. What you need to do is to accurately read into that structure. And if you see 3, it's 3. Don't complicate it. Don't make it so much that people don't understand what you're doing. Don't voodoo the charts. It's 3 waves. That means we know that the next wave going down, the next impulse going down would likely have 3 waves in it. 1, 2, 3. Now it can get 5, but we are saying it should get 3. So if you label that 1, 2, 3, and you're looking for this to, if you were looking for a fifth wave, you should look for this. This is not equal to this. We know that. Now you can fix it to make it equal, but it's not. And then if you do that, guess what you're going to look for next? If you do that and you label this 4, and then you label this 5, and let's say it happens that way, this is only your third wave. You have to have a fourth and a fifth, and that will never happen. It won't happen. I can tell you now that that is not going to happen. And guess what they will do hindsight? They will go hindsight and correct it. And then everybody else in the world will say, oh, you guys are crazy with that wave theory. It's just not working. So if we know that this is a big correction, and this is where the MACD comes in very handy. You go 2 months, go to the monthly, let's get it to see that as 3 waves. It's not a 5-wave structure, it's a 3-wave structure. So you go to 2 months. It's one piece. That is why we knew then and there that this structure is not going to give us a fifth one up. It's going to be a bigger structure of its own. It's going to be a separate, bigger corrective structure of its own. Because this becomes 1. We're going to be in a second one here. We don't know what this would look like. This might drop here and go back like that, then come down like this, and then we might get another 3-wave that goes like that. Remember, the pound is in a big correction. Remember, the euro is in a big correction. So is the Aussie. It's in a big corrective structure because this thing came from all the way at the top there, and we know that that is a 3-wave structure, right? I think we all know that that is a 3-wave structure coming down. Let's go look at it. Aussie. If you're not clear that that is a 3-wave structure, you can try to label this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry. You can label 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but that is incorrect. Because then this would be wave 1. Can you tell me where wave 3 and wave 4 is going? Nowhere. This is a simple 1, 2, 3 complete structure because it's an A, a B, and a C wave. 1 complete structure. This is one piece, A or W. And that means whatever we're in here is eventually, however this is going to be, and we know this is going to be long term. This can do this, do that, do this, do that. It's going to be here in a long time. A very, very long time it's going to be here. Triangle, I don't see a triangle in here as yet. I don't know if you're talking about making this bigger one as a big triangle at the bottom. We don't have enough information for that. I can see where your imagination is going, like this, if you're saying something like this, right? But we don't have enough information for that. That means this one will have to come all the way here, go back all the way to the top there, and then come down. And then you may be correct, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We just don't have the information for that. So let's stick around a little longer and see if that happens. So right now, this correction here could turn out to be a much bigger correction. Can we do that? See? If you know, and we broke this structure already, right? We broke that already and we're consolidating. So come back to what we know here. We break this up to give us parts of a whole. You see what I'm saying to you? You take one piece. These were 3 parts of a single one. So we make a pattern out of that. We look for this and we said, okay, we can see that pattern there. We look for whatever this is going to give us, and then we find a pattern here. And then we look for whatever it's doing, we'll find a pattern. And then eventually all of this together will give us a single pattern. So on any time frame you go, let's go back to the pound, on any time frame, including if you're in the daily, if you want to make a single pattern with whatever is happening here, let's say in the daily. for you to do the forecast, all of this has to be one piece, a complete pattern. So when we have an incomplete pattern, we're always looking for more parts of that pattern to complete it. So if we take everything that we have here going up, you can see you have one up, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How do you put that into patterns? How do we put that in the first place? What do you make of that? Why not count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? Because that's not what the chart is doing, right? The chart is making an impulse and a correction. And if you know corrective pattern, and if you know our rule, as long as you haven't broken the top or the bottom of this move, you're still in correction. So the only place the top got broken was here. So we could look at all of this as correction, but this was the low of it. So is that all the correction, and this is where the up move started? Remember, we said one wave is never a corrective structure. So do we know any corrective structure that may look like this? 1, 2, 3. See, contracting flat, exactly. So if we know that, then we will take this wave, and this wave, and put it together. And we'll make a contracting flat there. And now we would look for the break of this to the upside. It broke, it gives you a flag or a correction, you got a trade up. It makes another one. So we look at this one and we look at this one. Do we have divergence? No divergence. That means we are anticipating, at that point, you would anticipate. When it's at the top here breaking, which we sold, you would anticipate a bigger correction like this, because you need a bigger correction like this. 1, 2, 3, and then you're going for the Z. Right? That would be your forecast. That is how you would do it. You said, guys, we may be going down for a bigger X wave and then go back for the Z wave because we have a WXY. Right? So here is the question now. That did not happen. So what happened? How do we know that we can't label this as a correction? Because we can get rid of those. You can go 1 week. I think the 1 week got rid of it. Nope, you'll have to go 4 days. Come on. Oh, we are 4 days. Let's go 3 days, 2 days. And you can see immediately that you have a move here, which would be your impulse. You have a correction here, which would be this one. And all of this is one piece. So what we are getting is what you call an extension. An extension do exist. So now we know, and we know there's a crossover here, right? Right somewhere here. So you can say this is an extended Y. And it's not over. We don't know whether it's going to go more. So the question now is you have to break up the Y to figure out what is inside of the Y. Do we look at this as a W, X, Y, X, Z? That's the next question. Is it that or not? So how do you take those waves now and put it together to make patterns? We said, okay, there's a crossover here. There's a smaller one here if you're going to lower time frame. And we look at all of this and said, well, that doesn't look like a WXYXZ to us. Let's go back to the 4 hour or even the daily. I think the daily should be more than enough for it. Go back to the daily and said, okay, if we have an extension here and this is your first impulse, we got a correction here. Maybe this is the impulse. That's a correction. This is the impulse. But because we know the way patterns behave, this doesn't look impulsive. This doesn't look like the impulse to us. It didn't go very far. This one was pretty small compared to that. So what we're saying is that there's a very good chance that this tree wave here, and we know patterns like that, 1, 2, 3, that is because of the sharpness of that one coming down as well, is making a running flat. So we have 1, 2, 3. No divergence. That becomes W, X, sorry, X should be here, X, Y on a lower degree. So if you're gonna label this would be your bigger WXY, WX, and we're Y in a question mark because it's not over. We don't know where it will be over because we don't have divergence here. So we can actually expect this to do something like this, come back here and go back up for one more, even within the Y wave. Because within the Y wave, we still have the possibility for one more impulse to the upside. No divergence. Remember that rule. No divergence. It's a WXY. You're looking for one more up. And these are not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave structure, because if you break this up, you will get 1, 2, 3 wave inside. So for the purpose of learning, I'll go break that up so you can see that there's a 3 wave structure in that. Go to the 4 hour. And let's come here. We're looking at this piece going up here. This piece here going up, right? That piece, and you can see that there's 3 waves in that. Now you may say there's a crossover here. Well, let's go 6 hours or 8 hours. That should do the job. And you can see you have 1, you have 2, you have 3. So this wave is a 3 wave structure. You can see the very first wave here. 1, actually the 1 came all the way to this level. You got 2 and you got 3 here. This one has an internal crossover in the middle here. Right? There's an internal crossover there. There's an internal crossover in this one as well, but you will not see it in this time frame. You'll see it in the lower time frame. It's pretty fast move there. So they're all 3 wave structures, which means this one, if you break this up in a lower time frame, will still have 3 waves. So they're either one single sharp waves or 3 waves within them, or 5 waves. But this doesn't have 5 waves. You can fix it, but it doesn't have. And because of the nature of how this go up, we're going to make an assumption, the sharpness of this, we'll make an assumption that this is a running flat. So we have W, X, Y, and we don't know if this is going to go down. We will always anticipate one more up. But the one more up, if we're anticipating, it has to be the equal of this. So if this is coming down here as the first wave, we can expect them to go back up, not necessarily make an expanding flat or a running flat, maybe just a regular flat. Maybe just come like this, go back down there, and then go one more up. See? So we will take these 3 pieces and put them together to make one more up. So if you have to make a forecast or you have to decide whether you want to buy or sell this, you can wait. Have patience. If this is going up, it will make a flag here for you. You take that trade, it make a bigger flag. You take that trade, it make a flag. You take that trade, you see divergence, and you look for the sell. At some point, we will see whether this breaks the lower. We will see something like that in here. Remember when we saw that, we said, okay, watch it to break, make a flag, and then buy. We didn't think it was going to break the top. We thought they were just correcting to come back down, right? Because we were looking for a bigger X wave. Now we would look at this, and if this gives us an equal like this, we'll look for the Z wave. Yes, all corrections on every degree should be equal, should have an equal looks. I think we spoke of that in the very first wave. They should have equal looks, not exactly correct in time and in depth, but pretty much equal looking. And the MACD will help you with that to filter it. There are rare cases where you will find that a smaller correction, it looks a little bigger than the bigger correction. And that will happen, I can tell you when that will happen. That will happen if you get a very, very huge spike of an impulse up. And you had, time-wise, you had a small correction like that in terms of time. So let's say time-wise, this correction was pretty, well, you might get a big correction like this, looking like this going up. And this would still be a lower degree than this one. Because time-wise, this one was big, but because of the smallness of the correction here, the impulse there, you will not see a very deep move. I think one of the charts that I've seen that happening very, very clear that I'm starting to look at more seriously is the Bitcoin, right? If you go into Bitcoin and you look at Bitcoin here, I think this is just for learning purpose. And we go to the weekly, you would see that all of this, and this is pretty clear, an impulse, a correction that came deep here, and then they start a very big impulse. Within this impulse, you will see something strange. Because now you go to the let's say, I don't know, daily. And you start to see these very big impulses there, right? The corrections, they're very deep, but time-wise, they're short compared to, let's say, this one. If you compare them to this one here, this one time-wise is longer, but depth is not so much compared to even this, right? And you would find that this one, this gets filtered out, this gets filtered out, but this does not get filtered out. So you can probably go in 2 days or 3 days. Let's go with probably here. Right, in 3 days, actually, this is the one you see first. This is the first crossover that does not get filtered out. See this one here? This here. First impulse, correction, and everything else is one piece. There's a small one here, but I think we can filter that in on 4 days or something. That gets filtered out. That is this one here, this small, this very deep one. If that doesn't get filtered out, then that becomes an equal of this one. But you notice that time-wise, this one is much shorter than this, right? But the depth would be a little bigger. Now, this is rare because I haven't seen this pretty often. And I think that is mostly because of the big spikes they're making. Like, look at the depth of this one here. See the depth of that? Much longer than you can see here. But the time-wise of this took from here to here, compared to this one taking from there to there. So I think that time-wise in this, since correction is mostly a time factor, in this case, we'll have to go with the time-wise being the main factor on separating them, because these are sharp. Like this one is much deeper than this, right? But in time-wise, it's smaller, and the two of them are actually equal, because at the top there, you'll find you're making some kind of an expanding ending structure, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're probably going for 5, because this correction, I think, is one of its own. We can find it in the lower time frame. So this is like the rare ones that you see, where those impulses are so sharp that you're going to see this structure like that. You can, but I don't think that will help very much. The main thing is that you focus not so much on what type of you know, how you're going to do this in terms of whether you're going to use the trend lines, you're going to logs, you're going to use whatever. You just watch at what the pattern might look like, right? And in terms of the time here, this is like I said, this is a rare one. You don't get this so often, right? If you put anything else, it might just confuse you. So watch at this, look at this time. The time-wise, we'll only use instead of the depth, because the depth will become compared to the size of the impulses, not so much as the size of because of its bigness in terms of this one, the depth of this. Because this cannot go deep, right? The impulse in this is so small, right? The impulse in this is this is the impulse. So there's nowhere for it to go deep. But it can go in time factor very long, right? So we would look at it. Not even that. I think that is not what he's asking about. He's asking whether we can look at it in terms of using trend lines and all of that, right? It's not important. What is important is that, like this rare one, is we will look at the time factor. We will see whether when we get the crossover, there's a bigger time factor there. But like I said, this is rare. You will not find this in the currencies. On currencies, you don't find it. So let's come back here. You will not. I don't see any currency that has that structure, right? And because it's something new, Bitcoin is something new, we might be making different structures. We might be seeing some structures that Elliott couldn't identify or that we haven't looked at, right? But so far, I would look at that as an expanding ending diagonal, right? I would actually look at that as an expanding ending diagonal. So let's go back to here. Just remember that one in the future when we do it. Come back to how we combine it here again. Same thing. We will use this tree so far because of the sharpness of this one. And every time you see those sharp patterns with sharp waves, remember impulsive waves are sharp. You're going to always think, especially when they break the top into it, you're going to think expansion. The CAD has a very nice one, the CAD dollar. I'm going to go around all over the chart showing you where they are, because you'll not find the same one in this one. And here is a good example of where we recognize that also. when you had this sharp move down and this sharp move down. And the middle of it is pretty messy. See that? So what you do is you put these two together. You got a running flat and you know you're going to go back up. Right? So remember that pattern because it's pretty common. You will see it very often. And you will see it in a lot of different places. When we have cases of running and expanding flat, for labeling purposes, we will simplify it to A, B, C. And I think all of you know why, because we cannot look for divergence between this low and between this low. There's nowhere you can look for divergence because first it didn't break the low. And the second case is if it breaks the low in the expanding flat, this one was higher than this. So in expanding flats, running flats, and contracting flats, we will label them ABC. Nothing else but ABC. The WXY only comes in when we think. WX, this is an A, B, C for the X wave, and we're looking for a Y going up here, right? So you got a Y. Does that end the move? This is a case where the Y did end the move because this was a bigger correction of its own. That is a much bigger correction. And then we go up, this becomes an A, a B, and we go back for a C. And then you get this. Because an ABC is a complete structure. Now, every time you have a WXY, you remember this case, remember this very carefully. WXY, we anticipate a Z wave up, but we didn't get the Z wave up here. Right? Go back to the pound. Every time you get a WXY, we will anticipate the Z wave, but we might not get it. So there's a good chance this one just break and go. And this becomes a WXY. This here becomes a WXY, and we never get the Z waves. But guess what? Every single time we see that, we will always treat it like there's a chance it's going to go make that Z wave. Because if you don't, and you're in the cell and you don't protect what you have in the cell coming down, you think it's going down, you may get an X wave and you get taken out. So if you're in the 60 minutes and you know there's one more wave up and you're trading it, you would move that stuff to break even. Many times you'd hear me say so. Take this trade, but move it to break even. So if it's going to fall now or it's going to shoot up to the upside, you will be in the trade. But if it is making a correction for one more impulse, then it will take you out for break even. All right? Do we know which one of those options is going to happen right now? No, we don't. And you will never know. Right? Because the first wave coming now will always be an impulse. Whether the impulse is the start of the bigger impulse to the downside, or whether the impulse is the start of a corrective structure. Remember, every single structure starts with an impulse. So we can't tell simply by looking at that move and said, okay, this is very sharp, it's going down. Because it's sharp, it will always be sharp as the first impulse. Okay, let me see. I don't get that how you have WXY and then ABC. When end of C, why end of C not Z? Oh, you're talking about the CAD? I think you're talking about the CAD, right? Okay, so let's go back. I'll do that pretty fast. Wouldn't take us a couple seconds. Everybody else just hold on there. So this one is a W, X, and Y, right? And then why isn't this Z wave? Well, a number of things. Let's go to the daily so you can see that. I'll go to the daily first so you can see a number of things why that is not a Z. First, we broke the trend line. Okay, this becomes what by the rule, what that becomes? One piece of its own. This becomes a bigger correction here. We can also see it in the MACD here. So for us to see it in the MACD, we'll go to probably 4 days. Let's see. 1 week give us that. Yep, 1 week gives you. Make sense? Do we have divergence? Sorry, that's not a straight line. I think I'll put this one just to be safe. So we have this whole piece here. You remember the labeling always starts top to the bottom, not the bottom up. Up, down, from the top downwards. So from the top downwards, this is how many waves? 1, 2, 3, and it's an A, B, C. Then you will go down to the lower time frame. So I'll remove that so we can go down. I'll probably put it, let me just put it so you can, it will be there. Where's the ABC? A, B, C. Don't worry with the degrees, I'm just showing you. By the way, we created that for them. When we came, they had it wrong. You notice they have WXY, XZ, they have WXY. You don't see that way in anywhere. You never see WXY by itself. We created that for them. Let's go. That's something only our traders know who were with me from the very early days. When we came, they had a very messy thing there. They had some patterns and all kind of crazy stuff there. And I said, that's what you have there is incorrect. Right? We actually showed them how to do it. So this one, we can see we broke it up here. See that? We broke it up here, and we know that this is actually 1, 2, 3. No divergence. We don't have divergence there. I can show you that. I'm pretty sure, yes. So that becomes W, X, Y. You guys will set the degrees correct. I'm just showing you that it's a lower degree than that. And guess what? All of that is one piece. Remember what we said? We'll first put it one piece, then we'll break it up, then we'll combine it to make patterns. And you're combining to make patterns by putting these three together to make a structure. And then putting this tree together to make a single structure, and then putting that tree together to make another structure, and then put all of this tree together to make a single structure. And then we'll put all of this together to make one piece. Why did I skip over the red and the MACD? And count it as 3 waves. Let's go ahead again. Why did I skip over this piece and the MACD here and count it as 3 waves? That the question, Brendan? You just joined, or you're in the class all the time? Just want to make sure so I can explain it to you. Good. Anybody saw me explaining why this is one corrective structure? Remember that part? 2 sharp moves make a corrective running flat. Great. So this is a running flat. And if that is a running flat, this is your impulse, and that is your impulse. Make sense? See how confusing it is? You're in the room, right? And you're learning this. And I know it's confusing. Don't worry. It takes time for you guys to grab all of this. It's not going to be easy. So that is why I'm telling the guys in the weekly outlook, don't even try to think you can know what we do in here, because it could be messy. So that is one pattern. It means if we have to label this, we will use the classical ABC of a lower degree. So we'll prove A. Let me just see if I can grab a lower degree on that. I'll just put it and then lower it, change it. It's not going to allow me to do it like that, so I'll have to go A, B, C. I'll have to change the degree and then go format and then go, I don't know, what's the degree? I think, where do we get the degree? Style? Degrees, and you can, I'll just push any one lower, it doesn't matter. Did I choose the one that is higher? Let me go to get one that is lower. I don't know, I'll just choose one that is lower, just for, yeah, good. That's for safety. I'm not putting them in real orders. You guys will do that. I'm just showing you, right, that it's a lower degree. So this becomes your ABC. This becomes your WXY. This becomes your ABC. And this actually has 3 waves in it. You can see that. You label it yourself. I think by now you can do that, right? And this has 3 waves in it. You can label it yourselves. I think by now you can do that, right? Clear? Good. So Now that that part is clear, how we combine them to make patterns, and then we make all of them a single pattern. This trend line will change to here by the rule because we broke the top, and that becomes one single piece of its own. See, you put them together. So this here made that. This was your impulse. This is your correction. That's your impulse. You put them together, you pretty much have a flat pattern. So you have an impulse, you have a correction, and you're making another impulse. Easy? Between Y and Z, most of the time, there isn't any specific rules, but most of the time you will see divergence. I think 90%, 99% of the time you'll see divergence between the Y and the Z. Well, that is the whole point. Good question. Everybody stop right there. Neil has it perfect. When I do it, it looks easy. You know why it looks easy when I do it? It's not like I come every time and do something else. I follow the exact rules I gave you. And that is what we are saying here now. Just for counting's sake, there's only a few rules. One, if there is divergence between the two impulses in an uptrend or a downtrend, it doesn't matter. You will label ABC. Second, if there is no divergence, it will be two things. It will either be A123 or WXY. You don't know which one at that point. So rule number 3, how would you differentiate an ABC, a WXY from a 123? You will look at the internal counts of each impulse. Remember that. That's rule number 3. Look at if you don't have divergence, look at the internal counts of each impulses. So if the internal count is 1, 2, 3, like I showed you here on the Aussie, I didn't need to wait very long to know that the entire move to the downside on this Aussie is corrective. As long as I see 1, 2, 3, it doesn't matter where this goes or how far it goes, that entire move is corrective. Full stop. Because the first move in it is a 3-wave structure, not a 5-wave structure. Here is the problem that most Elliott wavers get. When they start to get a big move like this, they think they're in a trending mode. So this thing cannot be correction. And the people who first had that problem that I saw it, when I saw it as a problem, was ElliotWave.com. Remember I used to tell you guys about the very first group I trained? Well, the guy who actually got me to do that was a guy called Paul from Australia. And he was using ElliotWave.com before he actually asked me to teach them. He was a subscriber there and he had it. And his problem with them, what he said, they will always change the count and they will never give me a reason as to why they're changing the count. He was a subscriber, I think, for the last 5 years before he took the course. For 5 years, he was subscribing to them before he took the course because he was running his own small private fund, right? And then what he did when he took the course, 1 week after, I think 1 week after we completed the course, he unsubscribed from them. For 5 years, he was subscribing. 1 week after we completed the course and we did all the work, he unsubscribed from them because he said, I could see the nonsense that they're doing. And he was the one who showed me the Aussie first on their platform. They were labeling this structure. You wouldn't believe it. 1, 2, and this was a wave 1 of wave 3. So they had it like this 1. They were looking for a 2. So, sorry, they were looking for a 2 right here, and then they were looking for 3, and then they were looking for 4, and then they were looking for 5. And this somehow was their corrective structure. Possible? It's a little far stretched. It's possible. It's a little far stretched. And the reason they were doing that is because they couldn't see this here as a 3-wave structure. But even if you label that as the corrective structure in there, let's make an assumption. I would have probably done that if this one wasn't so big in comparison to that. But I can see this is a B wave here. If it had stopped here and then go down like that, I would probably do that, right? But they couldn't see this as a 3-wave structure and they couldn't see that as a 3-wave structure. They labeled this as a 5-wave structure. They literally labeled this whole thing here as a 5-wave structure, whereas we were labeling it a what? 3-wave structure. And that was the difference between what we were looking for and what they were looking for. And that is why we knew that this whole move will never give us a 5-wave to the upside, because what we said at that time was that even if this, because we didn't have divergence here, was that even if this came back here, it was going to make a Z wave. It would be a W, X, Y, X, Z wave, and then we are going to come down. So we knew at that time that this was not making a classical 5-wave motive wave to the upside, and they didn't know it. And I think that thing really hit him hard when he realized that the MACD is giving him an advantage over what they're doing. And he was like, okay, that's it. End of subscription. Let's look at this now, because this makes sense. He only paid $2,500 to learn that. If you know how much he paid in subscription, you would be shocked for 5 years. What I always said to traders out there, if you're subscribing to something like that, you may want to stop doing it, because most of them are useless. So now we know that the winner in that argument was the MACD. The MACD won it. The MACD said, nope, not doing 5-wave structures. Forget about it. We're not going up. And then when we combined this tree, I think was later on when we got a crossover in this, and I think was on the 3 months or the 2 months. Let me see. We went to 2 months. Yeah, something like this. We did 2 months, and it managed to combine that, and we had a crossover. We had a very, very tiny crossover here. A very tiny crossover there. We said, sorry, guys, not getting a 5th wave. If you were in my room, I think that should be about when? Way back, way back, way back. We had a very tiny crossover, I think was somewhere here. We got a tiny crossover there. We said, guys, this is one piece. That's it. That one piece is over. We're not getting the 5th wave up. And look what happened. So even before this starts to do that, we know we're not getting one more up. We know that was not going to happen, because this had already been one piece of its own. See? And we were the only ones in the world to know that. Nobody else did. Everybody still thought that these were sharp moves, and this was sharp move, and this is a pullback, and this is going to go like that. And we were like, no way. You're actually going to get a correction here, and this is going to be a bigger wave of its own. And it is a bigger wave of its own. Amazing thing. I'll be honest with you, sometimes I am amazed still about it. I'm still sometimes amazed of how accurate this thing is, if you really, really master it. Right? Yeah, Victor was the one here. A lot of the guys were here. Victor, Sherry, a lot of them. When we figure out that filtering thing, we weren't in trading view. So filtering was a headache for us. We used to have to, do all kind of voodoo stuff to get the filtering to go. And once we find that filtering, once we discovered that you could filter, the filtering was discovered within the group. I didn't start this whole MACD thing with filtering. Filtering was something we came to later. When we realized we were getting a little confused with it, we said, what if we filter it? What if we get into one higher time frame? What if we try to combine that? And then we started looking for a chart that could give us filter. And that's how we got into trading view in the first place. We start asking, we were trying to do voodoo filtering, right? And then somebody said, why don't you check this chart? You can change the time frame and the MACD. And he was like, yeah, let's go do it. Because we were doing filters like between 4 hours and 1 hour and 15 minutes and monthly and weekly, but we couldn't get like 8 hours and 6 hours. And then we got that and we said, let's go. This is magic for us. They did not know how much we value their charts because they were not doing that. They did not know it. We actually knew how much we value that chart because of the MACD. So that's the number one thing, and that is why everybody knows, hey, everybody's asking about the MACD. I think somewhere, one of my guys tried to leak it that we're using the MACD for something. He couldn't tell them what and where. He was too scared because he knew I'll go after him. But he keeps saying, oh, the MACD doesn't have divergence. So the MACD have divergence. You're trolling me. So some people paid attention and realized that the MACD was important. They didn't know what. And he would not dare to do that because I'll really go after him if he did. He's from Canada, by the way, so it would be a nice place to take him to court. right? He didn't take the chance. He didn't want to risk it because he know I'll get there and I'll go after him. I'll take a trip to Canada. Why not? Spend a weekend there, spend some time there. I have enough people in Canada to get him. So he didn't want it to do that. And not something any one of you should do. Don't share it. Let's keep it for ourselves. You pay for it and you take the time to learn, give it some value. Let's do it. So watch this thing. It's very, very important. How are you going to label? Let me go back to the label. I'll run through the labeling again before we end. Rule number 1, divergence between the impulses, ABC, full stop. Rule number 2, no divergence between the impulses. It's either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or W, X, Y, Z. Rule number 3, to differentiate between W, X, Y, Z and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're going to look at the internal structure of the impulses. If the first impulse is 3 wave, that's it. It's a W, X, Y, Z. If the first impulse is 5 waves, you look at the third impulse and then you look at the fifth impulse. All the impulses should either have 5 subwaves or very, very strong 1 wave in them. And then we will consider that to be a motive wave. So far, not much luck in that. And that is because we are following Elliott wave rules. Now, we could change that and create our own rules, but we're not there and we don't want to get into that argument with anybody else yet. Maybe eventually, and I think eventually, we will change the entire outlook of how you look at charts, because basically even on the yearly charts, you can see it and I can see it and all of us can see it. There aren't much 5-wave structures. And if there are 5-wave structures, they don't fit the rules that he labeled for the 5-wave structures. They more or less fit because the subwaves are 3 waves. Even when we find 5-wave structures, and there are 5-wave structures, you will see a lot of them. I can go show you where we'll find one. If I can offhand, let me see if I can find one anywhere right now. We have a lot of WXYZ. Anybody, any one of you guys want to help me where there is one that we can go with? I think on the Pong, gold may have one. Let's go to gold and see. They're 5-wave structures, but they're literally not, they're not fitting the rules he put down for the 5 waves. So where's gold? Gold should be up at the top here. That will be in which one has 5 waves. I don't know what time frame you're looking at for the 5 waves in gold. Let me see daily. Not that I can see. Or even, oh, if you're labeling, well, this one, if you're labeling this one here, it's not good. I think we can filter that out. This would be a big, oh, this is a 5-wave structure, but this one you can see it. Look, I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a 5-wave structure. I labeled that in gold, and that is why we know this is going to go up. I think we were looking at that as an ending diagonal because we had continuous divergence here, right? So that might not come, but the subwaves in here, you can see they're pretty much all 3-wave subwaves. Look at them. All of them has 3 waves, except for the last one, right? But you can see it, right? This was perfectly timed when we did that. I think you may find a lot of them, but most of them will be WXYXZ, right? That is because we're using Elliott rules, right? The 5 subwaves. So what if we change those rules? And I'm thinking of this. What if we change those rules and we said, okay, when we find a 5 wave in a correction, and by that it will mean if the 5 wave is inside of here without breaking the top or the bottom, we can label those WXYXZ. But if the 5 wave is in an impulsive move, then we can label them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think just for, for comfort's sake, if we want, we can do that, regardless of whether they have subwaves of 3 waves, right? Let's say it's an impulse. Let's say in this wave, in this piece here, you find it as an impulse, right? This is a correction in the next impulse. And let's say these had 5 waves in them, right? With 3 subwaves in the middle. We can decide that we will label these as the impulse waves with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and these is WXYZ, regardless of whether the subwaves have 3 waves in them. That could be something we could change. That would change a lot of how we look at the whole structure in general, right? And understanding of Elliott wave. That might be a game changer. And we have to be prepared to defend it, which means we have got to make sure that whatever we are doing, we backtest it so much that it should be like a wall proofs that there is nothing there that they can hook on to say, well, okay, this place you got it wrong. But what I also noticed is that when you have those 5-wave structures like WXYXZ here as an impulse, it is part of a bigger corrective structure. So I was very comfortable with labeling it like that because this becomes either an A wave or a W wave in a much bigger structure. So in general, it is not a motive wave. Just like if you think of Aussie, right? Let's look at Aussie. If you look at Aussie and you label Aussie, let's say we look at Aussie and we said, okay, go back to the yearly, monthly, for example. And let's pull up this one. I think let's pull up this one, right? So let's say in some part here, you're looking at this. We know that this is a big 1, 2, 3. A big 1, 2, 3. And whatever is going to be in here is all going to be corrective. So whether we label this WXYXZ and the WXYXZ somewhere else, let's say this make WXYXZ in here. Let's just make an assumption. We know that's a corrective structure. Actually, you have one like this on the Pound New Zealand, right? No problem. You can watch a recording. We have one like that, I think, in the Pound New Zealand. Let me just show you where Pound New Zealand and Pound Oz. We'll find one like that where there was a 5-wave structure in the middle. I'll have to go to probably the daily to see it. I have to go more backwards. I think it's somewhere in here. No, it's way backwards, way backwards. Should be way down somewhere here. Let me see where we can find that. Pound Oz or Pound New Zealand, if I can remember. One of them had that 5-wave structure in it that gives us, not this, maybe the Pound Oz, let me see. I just can't remember offhand where it is. I think this one, no, this was 3-wave, that was 3-wave. So this one here, if this goes up, this one is not here, but if this goes up here, that's what we'll have. We'll have a WX, YX, Z pattern and then downside, right? But that one is far from happening, is it? But there is one like that. I'll find it. I think it's in a lower time frame. I'll find it and post it for you guys. Aussie New Zealand is doing that right now, I think. No, Aussie New Zealand would be a 3-wave structure. WXYX to the outside is just 3 waves too, not 5. Maybe in a bigger time frame we can. So there are structures like that. There are many WXYX that we labeled. I mean, endless. We'll just find them in lower time frame. So I want you to focus today on those. So when you go back and look at the charts, focus on how we label. Remember labeling. I want you to understand labeling is just to help you identify where you are on different degrees of count. Right? So don't make it any big, thing about where. It's not how you should trade the chart. Trading is when we come to strategy. Labeling has very little to do with trading because remember, charts could get expanded like I show you in the pound, right? If you were thinking that it's going to go down for an X wave, you will be surprised because it's not going down for an X wave. It's actually making an expanded Y, right? And we will only know that after. We cannot decide it in advance that the Y would be extended. Sorry, not expanded, extended. You don't know that. So in terms of trading, the labeling itself has little to do with it. The labeling is just to tell us, okay, we know where we are. We know this is a W and an X. We know this is still Y wave, and there's a possibility for another X and then a Z. Just to know where you are. It's like a map when you're traveling. The map doesn't help you. The map is not taking you where you're going. The map is just a guidance to where you're going, right? You know which road you are. You know where you have to turn. You know where you have to do what. So the labeling is just a map. Nothing more than that. Don't treat it as anything else. It's not the reason for trading. It's to let you understand where you are on the bigger charts. Because when you're on the 4-hour, you cannot see the bigger charts. But you can look at the label and say, okay, we are in an X wave on a weekly or an X wave on the monthly, right? This is an impulse down on the 4-hour, but it's still an X wave. It's the first impulse in an X wave on the weekly. Right? So that is what the labeling is for. In terms of trading, we'll come to trading and strategy at the end of the week, but I want you to get this clear because labeling is important to let you know that. Is there more upside? Is there more downside? Are we still in a consolidation? That's where the labeling is going to help you. Right? It is very, very important that you guys practice the label. Don't worry that I don't have it because I know these charts. I can literally draw these charts if you wake me up in the middle of the night and you ask me what is the euro doing right now? I'll tell you. I do this more than once daily. And I've been doing it for the last many, many years, right? Last 5 years. So I can draw these charts in without looking at them. I don't need labeling to tell you where I am right now. I can tell you that. So you need to practice, practice, practice. You probably will get there where you will memorize the charts and you will remember what they look like and you wouldn't have to worry about labeling them, right? So somebody said Aussie New Zealand, and I'm thinking, I know what he's talking about. He's talking about the Aussie New Zealand. We had that sharp impulse up. We had a big 1, 2, 3 to the downside. We thought this was going to go up, but instead it did this. It did a move down like this. It did that. It did a bigger move down like this, and it did this, right? And now it's coming down. What he's thinking is this is a WXYXZ, but no, we broke this structure here. We didn't break this low, sorry, but we broke the structure, right? We broke the structure. This one is much bigger. So this is actually a 3-wave structure. We can look at this as an expanding flat in the middle on the Aussie New Zealand. That is possible, but it's a 3-wave structure. So let me bring it up and show you what it is, right? Aussie New Zealand, he's talking about this piece, right? He's talking about on the daily, he's talking about this piece here. See that piece there, see this piece? We broke the structure. Remember I said we broke the trend line. Remember I said this is a bigger one of its own. So we can either look at this as a 1, 2, 3 here in the middle, or we can look at this as a 1, 2, 3. Either would be correct if you want. We can filter this out if you go 2 days. All right, let's go 2 days. 2 days and you'll probably filter that out. Well, let's go 4 days. Why is it not going 4 days? And it's gone. You see? I know it because I remember the chart. I literally remember this chart. I could draw it at any time you wake me up, right? So we know that this is now 1, that is 1, and this is 1. What we don't know is if we want to put this piece here as an expanding flat in the middle. That is possible, right? That's a possibility, but it's not very important right now. This is an impulse. See that? And we were expecting this to come back here either as a 1, 2, 3, and then go back up, making this whole piece 1, 2, 3, and then go up. See? I remember these charts. So I don't have to label it. I know what I'm expecting this chart to do. You, for practice sake, will have to do all that stuff because you're not there as yet. You're very far from remembering and understanding and knowing all the structures. And that is why we're looking for a sell setup here. I know we're looking for a sell setup, but I know how this sell setup could behave. I know all the weak points of how it could do, right? So you guys start practicing and labeling and drawing your trend lines and putting all those stuff. You need to do that so that you can do it correctly. And when you do it correctly, then you can decide, okay, I grab the concept, I understand it, I don't need it anymore, right? But for now, you need it because you're not looking at the charts correctly as yet. You want to go home now, right? So everybody, you're correct. It's about time because I guess your brain is already refusing to accept any more new information, right? So we'll stop there today. Tomorrow we start looking at the patterns. Tomorrow we'll go into charts and we will look for flats. I will show you flats. I'll show you the different type of flats. I would show you how to recognize them. I'll show you how to use the MACD to aid you in understanding them, and we'll go from there, right? I'm pretty sure you know, these are new information to you guys. It will take some time. Let me stop the recording.